going back to Napoleonics. Boyd Bruce's Absolute Emperor. Napoleonic Wargame Battles, part of the Osprey Wargames Blue Book series. Grand Tactical. Going to try to incorporate a few of the lessons we learned in the last video about this rule set. And, as we get started, there's another one. That variable is who sets up first. It can be very critical, particularly in a game like this, where it's a game of matchups. If you've got a whole lot of infantry who are able to goon swarm a cannon, an artillery unit, that artillery unit's going to go down. Might as well not even have put points on it. On the other hand, if you've got a lot of cavalry and you can get a grand battery set up, you're going to be able to dominate cavalry from approaching that position. So what we did today, since we're going to play a game here, let me walk you through it. These are the exact same units we saw in the last video. The British down here are going to be attacking. They need to take this hill. But to do that, they're probably going to have to take this town as well. In fact, we've got two objectives. And if the British can take both objectives by the end of turn number 10, then they'll win the scenario outright. If they can take one of the objectives, then we'll call it a wash. And if they can take none of them, if they get driven off the field by this much smaller French force, then we're going to call it an absolute emperor victory. An absolute victory if neither one of these are being held by the British. As we saw in the last video, Boyd Bruce says, hey, if you've got defensible terrain, that counts for a division. Well, okay, so what were we looking at here? We're looking at 1 corps of French up here on the north side of the table and 2 corps of British down here in the south. As you can see, we've got one cavalry. All the cavalry are line cavalry. We're going to keep it kind of simple today. Everybody is seasoned. We're not worrying about difference of quality of troops. We've got 2 units of infantry on the side of the French, and then this stand right here is a unit of artillery. There is a corps commander and an overall commander right there. So this corps commander has to stay within 18 inches of the overall commander, and every unit on the French side has to stay within 4 inches of one of these 2 guys. That's their command and control. Down here, things get a little more complicated. Now, I'd also point out, because there's 4 units, that means this corps commander must have an elan of 4. We'll keep it simple. Down on this side, our corps commander has... Now, this is where things get a little bit wonky, because Boyd says, hey, you got to add 1 more division or unit. Each of these... So we've got 3 divisions over here and 3 divisions over here, and each of those 3 sets constitutes a corps, and we've got 2 corps commanders. It's actually supposed to be light infantry base, but in order to distinguish my overall commander from the 2 corps commanders, I'm using that. It's fine. You get it. These guys are standing around a tent. As I was saying, we've got 4 units to the north. We've got 6 units to the south. See, 1 cannon, 1... Well, actually, there's 2 units. Each of the corps has a unit of cavalry, line cavalry, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 units of foot cavalry. So, because you need those extra couple of guys, well, that means that because you need those couple of extra units, you have to have 2 corps commanders. Corps commanders, again, have to stay within 18 inches. All of the units, each of these units, have to be within 4 inches of one of these commanders. Well, these 3 have to stay within 4 inches of this guy. These 3 have to stay within 4 inches of this guy, because there's our 2 corps. So each of these commanders only has an elan of 3. It's total elan of 4, total elan of 6. The side with the lower elan will act first in every turn. Elan of 4, elan of 6. That means the French go first. Hey, look at that. Our defenders set up first, and they've opted to set up their cavalry over here around behind the hill. There is just enough room to move through this gap in squadron, or they can sweep all the way around and just kind of roll up the flank. But of course, they have a cavalry unit over here. So we may wind up with a 1-on-1 cavalry unit, and whichever unit wins is going to set the tone of the battle. That's how things work. So here on the first turn, I'm going to go ahead and save us all some time. I'm just going to move all the French units, and then I'm going to move all of the British units. And to kind of close the circle on that discussion earlier, if you have the lower elan, you got to set up first. The defender sets up first. That goes a little ways towards balancing the fact that they are outnumbered almost 2-to-1. How much are they outnumbered point-wise? Don't care. But I do care that sometimes it's hard to remember what turn we're on. So over here, somewhere between the town and the hill, I've got a little turn marker there, D12. It's the end of turn number 1, and we've moved everybody. The only movement that the defenders are going to have is to bring their squadron up to here, and they're waiting to see which way they want to go. And they're going to have to decide, it looks like, whether they want to sweep around and do the cavalry fight, or just dive in and start messing things up over here. Now they have to be careful because I got to stay close to this guy, their corps commander. But I don't think that's going to be any problem. Nice thing is the corps commanders are real elusive. We just kind of move them around 4 inches at a time. We've moved the artillery for the British up to this point. I looking at the sheet, I have a cheat sheet here, and look at this. It turns out, I was thinking that I kept using this line right here, artillery canister is 6 inches and 18. It should be 2 inches and 6 inches. Right, I use the 10 millimeter scale. Wait, do I? No, I use the, which scale do I use? I use the 10 millimeter, and then I cut that in half. Wait. No, I use the 10 millimeter. So they actually have a canister range of 4 inches. They can move 6 inches. And if they move, they can move 12 inches altogether, which, actually, we could bring them all the way up to here. In fact, if they move completely along the road, they can move 6 inches. And if with a move and a move, that moves them 12 inches to there. And that does put them into effective range. Yeah, see, those are. I don't need to cut it in half at all. 2 inches, 4 inches, easy. Easy peasy. Everybody else is in column, and the British had a terrible mistake. They put their cavalry way out on the far right wing, and now they have to move them in column march to kind of swing them around here. It looks like we've got a couple of units of infantry trying to lay siege to the town, and maybe we'll bring this cavalry over to support the assault on the hill over here. So that's really about it for turn number 1. We do have to do movement for turn number 2 next. And like I said, the horses have to commit first. What do we want to do with them? We're going to bring them out this way. That threatens the main thrust of the attack by the infantry. This British infantry may have to form square to protect itself from the cavalry. However, if they do so, they're going to be vulnerable to getting blasted to smithereens by this artillery. Fortunately for the British, they do have the backup in the form of this lightning-quick movement by the cavalry over here on the extreme left wing. That's also buying time for the cavalry on the extreme right wing to move up. Now, I've moved them a couple of extra inches. I cheated them out of a couple inches of movement on that first turn, so I gave it to them on the second turn. But they are still in column attack. And this highlights another issue that us Napoleonic neophytes struggle with. As you can see, this attack is ready to go. It's fully developed, man. We are ready to go, except these guys are, we could have used one more turn to get them to where we really want them. If we do the thing where we fix this infantry, this British infantry with the artillery, that leaves this infantry exposed to this French infantry exposed to the British cavalry. So now what we've done is the British finally have an overwhelming, I don't want to say overwhelming, but they have greater numbers. Numbers are on their side over here. When it was just an infantry, a cavalry, and an artillery one-on-one, the British were going to lose that. But now we've got our cavalry over here, so we've got a little bit of an edge that may account for the hill. Likewise, we've got 2 units of infantry ready to assault the town, and we got to hit the town from 2 directions at once if we hope to dislodge this French infantry. Infantry in a village, in a town, in a built-up area are hard to dislodge. On a one-on-one, you're going to lose that. But on a 2-on-1, you have a much better chance. And really, we might have wanted to hold these guys back over here on the left until this had time to develop. We're still about 2 or 3 turns away from even getting stuck in on the village. So that may be a problem. We're not going to be able to resolve this. Or, I don't know, we'll have to see how it plays out. Maybe we can resolve the hill, and the survivors, if we can drive the defenders off the hill, the survivors can help overwhelm. I don't know. Let's play it out. Well, in service of just playing it out, we get to do some artillery. The British did not move. All they did was unlimber. And they are, as you can see, within 12 inches, and they're aimed. So the way that the fire arcs work on this one, you only shoot straight ahead. So you have to kind of rotate and make sure that you're aiming the way you want to go. And that was one of the issues that the French had, is that by aiming this, one of the reasons that the cavalry had to stop right here is that they didn't want to interfere with this fire arc. And I just interfered with it myself. I'm a very good host. This artillery now has 2 options. They can opt to fire at this artillery or this infantry. Sorry, the French artillery has 2 units that they can fire at. Whereas the British artillery, by kind of pointing in this direction, in fact, that's the way we wanted to leave them, all they can do is shoot at the guys on the hill. There is one other little wrinkle to this rule set that I haven't really been paying a lot of attention to because it doesn't always come up. The player with the higher elan gets to decide whether we resolve all firing and combat from left to right or from right to left. Then the player with the lower elan gets to shoot first. That means if our artillery fires at this artillery first, they do enough damage to drive them from the field. If the French fires at the British first, which they will because the French only have 4 elan, or at any unit, and drives that unit from the field of battle, that British unit won't be able to return fire. Not the case here, but something to be aware of for later. We're going to roll 2d6, hitting on 5s, 1 hit maximum. You only count the highest roll. And we're going to go ahead and fire at the British line infantry, rolling 2d6. We get no hits. The British are going to fire at the guys on the hill. Now, one thing to be aware of, when you are shooting at a unit on a hill, if you are just a bunch of infantry with a bunch of muskets, there's a penalty for that. If you're a cannon firing uphill, no penalty. And we get 2 hits, but because we are not at canister range within 4 inches, we only count the first one. That means we're going to have 1 wound to this French unit on the hill. As always, I use tiny little red dice to mark the number of hits inflicted on a unit. So there's 1 hit. That does not cause any like morale checks or waiver checks or anything like that. All it does is mean that when we get stuck in, this unit will have 1 less hit point. And really, I think that's it for this turn. Like I said, going left to right, right, left doesn't matter because there's not a whole lot of shooting going on yet. You only fire 2 inches at a time, but we may have some charges. To figure out, if you do, you measure straight ahead up to 4 inches, and as you can see, this cavalry unit does not. If we had been smart and we had rotated it, oh, but the woods are in the way, that's going to be a problem. They are the only unit, this French line cavalry is the only unit with any potential to be able to charge. So that does mean we are at the end of the turn. We have a command phase that doesn't really matter because nobody is halted or disordered or anything like that. We can move on to turn number 3. And I moved the die down here just so that it's a little more clear what turn we're on. We are on turn number 3. And as always, the French have to move first. And boy, now we're in trouble, aren't we? What do we do with this unit? Our cavalry is stuck between a hill and a wood, and cavalry and infantry. Because if we move them at all, well, if we move them, where do we move them to keep them safe? I think we may need to move them off in this direction. They can only move 4 inches. So if we bring them over here, we can blunt the attack, but we're really going to leave ourselves exposed. We're terribly exposed, and then we can rotate at the end of the movement. So we're going to do something a little like that. We're going to set up in front. Unfortunately, we're in squadron, and then because we're afraid of getting hit by this unit. That's the only movement we've got for the French. Now for the British. By planting themselves right here in the center of the action, this French cavalry unit has slowed the attack of the British. There is a 2-inch zone of interaction. The British cavalry, sweeping up the center, has to stop within 2 inches. The British infantry also have to stop within 2 inches. And the cavalry way over here, there's nobody left to fight them. There's nobody left to stop them. They're going to sweep right on across. We'll see what happens over there. Over on the British right flank, you can see that we are still struggling to get our 2 units. They're marching in column, trying to get on either side. We probably should have sent this second unit up this way to make it really clear what's going on. But I think in the next turn, we're going to be able to form line. And then in the following turn, so probably on turn 5, we'll be able to start fighting to see if we can take this town. Might work out okay for the British after all. As with last turn, now are we within 4 inches? We are within 4 inches of this artillery unit. So the French artillery is going to unload at canister range and get a 4 and a 2 and do no damage. Meanwhile, our British artillery has a clear shot at the French horses, and it's within canister range. Let me re-roll that. They are going to do 1 damage. Nobody else that can shoot is within 2 inches of an enemy. These guys came up just a little bit short. We're done with shooting. Now we have to do charges, and we have a couple of those. The British cavalry are going to charge it. Well, who charges first? Once again, it doesn't really matter because there's only one unit capable or even interested in charging. That is this unit on the part of the French. And the French get to decide, and they say, well, I'm going to go from right to left as you, dear viewer, are watching, and we'll handle this one first. We have 1 charge of French against 1 charge of British. And now it gets interesting because each of these units is capable of charging at the other. It's a charge-counter-charge. Both units have to make an activation test. Remember, they're both seasoned. Both of them need a 4 or better to succeed. Blue die for the French, red for the British. And as you can see, the British charge, the French do not. So the French in squadron are going to have to take this charge. The British are also going to succeed on their charge as they assault this artillery up here on the hill. We're done with all of our charges. Now we get to do combat. Cavalry in squadron, roll 2d6. Cavalry in line, roll 4d6. But because the British charged, they get a bonus die. Everybody is hitting on 4s or better. The British are going to score a total of 3 hits, and the French will score 2. That forces the French cavalry to withdraw and become disordered. They will wind up back on the backside of the hill. They can interpenetrate without issue, but they will maintain. I'll have to find, there we go, for my nice soft sand, fine sand ground cover does not work great. Okay, but we're not done with this combat yet, because the British are going to have to follow up another 4 inches, and that will cost them 1 damage, so they are now at 3 points of damage. Hey, wait a second, does that count as the combat phase? 3 hits cause an infantry unit. Cavalry withdrawn, but well, no. Because this happens already. They do their follow-up charge. They are within 4 inches. I'm going to leave them at the base of the hill, but you and I know that they're really on the hill itself. They have now charged into contact with the infantry unit, which may seem like a very useful thing, except that this British... Oh, and then these guys are disordered, the French cavalry. The British line does have an opportunity to form square. You can form square in the shooting phase for free. However, if you do that, you are at the mercy of... Oh, I should probably pull back here a little bit so you can see the full tactical situation. Had the French formed square during the shooting phase, this artillery would have rolled additional dice. In fact, let me look it up real quick. They would have rolled an additional 3d6, and all 3 of those could be potential hits. Artillery makes mincemeat out of infantry in square. Be that as it may, here's where we're at right now. The infantry, now that they've got some troops that are blocking the cannon fire, they want to form square, but to do that when you've got 4 whole stands of horses riding you down, you need to pass an activation test. This is going to be really important for the French. If they get a 4 or better, it's going to go... They're hoping for 4 or better. All right, so they do. Now what I'm going to do, because we don't have a whole lot of room here, I'm just going to kind of bend them around kind of like this. So they have now formed square. And there's, honestly, the cavalry probably should have moved back a little bit further. I mean, we can kind of put them like that, and then that gives us room. But you know, you get it. The representation is accurate. So now we have a situation where the British cavalry is in trouble, because cavalry against a square, now they're in line still, so that's good. Infantry, where we go here? Cavalry attacking infantry not in square get an extra 2d6. Oh, that's what it is. Cavalry attacking infantry only roll a single infantry in square only roll a single d6. The infantry that are in square, when they attack the, let's see, infantry square versus cavalry, they roll 3d6. The British don't have a choice. They have to charge. They have to do that follow-up charge, at least the one. And everybody's hitting on 4s. So the only result is that our cavalry here scores, gets hit one more time. They take one more hit, and that's not enough to force anything. I think they stay locked in combat. Or they have to withdraw 4 inches. So that brings them all the way back to here. All in all, I think that was, I don't know. How did that go? I don't know how well that worked out for the British, to be honest with you. That might have been the right play to disrupt the charging cavalry by the French. We're not done with combat yet. These French horses are charging an artillery, and I don't think this is going to go well for the artillery. The artillery against cavalry attacking an artillery unit in combat roll 2d6. But they roll 2 red d6. Artillery only roll a single d6. Hey, wait a second. Attacking uphill means that our cavalry only rolls 1d6. This is a pretty fair fight, now that I look at it. I see. We are attacking the flank, meaning the British get an extra 2d6. And now it's a very unfair fight because the British are hitting on 4s, the cannon are only hitting on 5s. And wouldn't you know it, the cannon and the horses each get a single hit. Bear in mind, the artillery become disrupted with just 1 hit. What that does is it forces our horses to withdraw 4 inches. And it doesn't matter whether they're in squadron or line, apparently. We'll bring them back like so. And that's just a withdrawal. They are not... Oh, I got to bring them back a little bit more. Oh, wait a minute. Their front should be 4 inches. They should still be within 4. That's a withdrawal. They're not disrupted or anything like that. We good, guys. We good. I think that's the end of the turn. Anybody else charging? Nope. So we do a little bit of cleanup. And the last thing we have to do... Now, these guys didn't take enough hits. If they had taken 5 hits, this French cavalry would have to test to see if their colors were lost. That golden eagle stays in their hands, and we move on to turn number 4. Some of you guys were getting ready to hit the comment section. Artillery contacted by charging cavalry or infantry is destroyed if it receives any hits. The 2-hit situation is one of shooting, not combat. But the charging unit does not get to make any follow-up moves. So this unit, this cavalry, has now eliminated 1 unit from the enemy. Now, I don't think... Do artillery have colors that can be lost? Is it any unit? It is. On a roll of a 5 or a 6, the colors are retained. The French commander still has all 4 of his elan. And now we move on to, I think this is turn number 5. And the French still have to decide what they're going to do first. Oh, wait a minute. No, I forgot. On turn number 4 still, we have to do a little bit of cleanup. Automatically, this disordered unit becomes halted. We replace the disorder marker with a white halted marker. And then we do have the opportunity to, you know what, I think these guys have to withdraw. It says they don't withdraw, but they're within 2 inches. We're going to bring the commander around over here. He doesn't want any of this combat action. They count, the British cavalry counts as being 2 inches away here. We're going to spend 1 elan. The French are now down to just 3 elan. But this withdrawn and halted unit now becomes fresh. We have to do that so that when we go to turn number 5, the French cavalry can form line and be ready to countercharge. That's going to force the British cavalry to set up a little... Well, who's going to get to charge first? Remember that the French get to decide who's charging from left to right. So the French are going to have the opportunity to charge first here. We've got 4 versus 1 for the wound points. And this is going to be... We're just going to have to do a cavalry charge over on this side. That does... The elimination of that artillery does allow us to bring this infantry up. And now we got to leave our... We got to leave our little gap, so we're going to slide them along like this. And then these guys, again, can only move 2 inches. No, that's not true. That's not true. We can bring our cavalry up 4 inches. They have to stop at that 2-inch mark, but we're going to leave a little gap for our artillery. Bring our leader up. So our artillery is going to have a shot over here. Off camera, the British right is forming a line, and we're going to have some shooting action over here around the village. Meanwhile, we have some shooting. Do we want to go from right to... The French get to decide. We're going to go from this side to this side. Now, this gets a little weird because we have an odd situation where the British are going to be firing 2 dice versus 2 dice. The division that is inside the village has it only has enough weapons to fire out one side. The line infantry that are facing them, normally when you're in line you roll 4d6, but because of the cover, the line infantry attacking also gets 2d6. So we're going to have 2 different shooting combats here, and we'll go from right to left as you look at it. The British score 2 hits, the French score 1. And I'm going to wait to drop the casualties down on the guys in the town. They have taken 2 hits so far, and then they take a 3rd hit. So now I'm ready to drop a d6 down and just show that they have taken 3 hits. In the meantime, each of the British shooty boys have only taken 1 hit. Then we have an artillery unit that's going to take a shot. They are only going to be able to do up to 1. They score 1 success, and that's going to add a 3rd point to the infantry on the hill. Now, bear in mind the infantry dropped out of square, because if they didn't, this would be 5d6 with a maximum of 4 hits. They're going to have to rely on their ability. They still have enough gumption, if you will, to withstand, to make the activation to form square when they're charged by this cavalry. And of course, they're going to be charged by this cavalry, but they do have protection in the form of the French cavalry on the other side of the hill. Which brings us to, is there any other shooting? These guys are too far away. This unit of French infantry does get to take a shot. They're within, actually, because our cavalry can stop 3 inches away. If we stop them 3 inches away, I don't think the French can shoot at them, can they? Cavalry charge 4 inches. Yeah, so we do that. We stop a little further than like 3 inches away. And then I'll just back them up just to show that was the intention. The French the French have to charge first, and since they only have 1 charge, and they get to declare, are we going left to right or right to left? The French actually want to go from your right to your left. The only charge they've got, so in other words, we have to do this one first, and once again, we got to roll. And because both units are kind of splitting the difference on the hill, we're going to give neither one of them the advantage of going uphill. But we do have to roll to see who gets their charge off. Both guys are successful on a 4, and once again, the British are successful and the French are not, which gives the British an extra d6. And we'll kind of squeeze them in as best we can, like that. So now, because both guys are in line, at least the French are going to get to roll a total of 4 dice. Everybody is hitting on 4s. The British are going to roll 5 dice. They get the extra because they succeeded in their charge. The French will score 2 hits, and the British will score 2 hits. That goes to 3 for the British, and it goes to, to 6 for the French. And that does keep the British cavalry at bay. I think the French have to be happy with that result. What happens when there's no clear-cut winner? Well, everybody took 2 hits in the combat phase, so nobody's going to recoil. However, cavalry that did not defeat their target charge must withdraw 4 inches. 4 inches is going to put our French right on the edge of the battlefield. So if we pull them back, and that may have taken them out of the fight. Come here, number 6. You're not so clever. They're going to have to go back to here, and the British are going to have to fall back 4 inches themselves, and that'll put them right at the edge of the woods. They do have just enough room here, I think, to squeeze in by the infantry. Now, as mentioned, we have to go from right to left. That means the British over on this side. That means the British on the right are going to charge into combat first. I'm not going to put them in contact. It's a 1-inch zone around for built-up areas. It's going to be 2d6 for each side. Same principles apply. The British are going to get no successes. The French are going to get 1, so the British casualties go to 2 on that fight, and then we'll do this fight over here on the southern side. And in this case, the British get 1 hit, and the French get 1 hit. And the reason you want to combine like this is that if you can get 2 and 2, then you've done the 3 points of damage that might have dislodged. You know, that might have happened last time. 3 hits in combat cause an infantry to withdraw from combat. 3 hits would have caused them to get out of the town. And we might have had 3 hits. Oh, but that's in combat. In shooting, you need to do 4. No, all that would have done is disorder them. You don't recoil from shooting, apparently. Or you need the full 5 to take the waiver test, which would force withdrawal. That didn't happen here. So in this case, what's going to happen is the British troops are going to get thrown out of town like that. And you can see how the town is going to slow this attack considerably, but it's going to take time. The British have enough hit points, if you will, to force the issue eventually because they outnumbered the defenders 2-1, but it's going to take time, and they're not going to be able to help out over here. The last charge we have to do is the British cavalry charging up the hill, and can the French infantry get into square? And with a result of a 6, even though I rolled the wrong color die, they will get into square. But interestingly, so that we have the same situation where the French are going to roll 2 dice, and the British are going to roll 1 die. Cavalry attacking uphill. Cavalry attacking infantry square is 1d6. Well, okay. It's 1d6 total. Don't worry about all the rest of the modifiers. You at least get to roll that 1 die because you're charging in an awkward position. And the infantry fighting out of the square, they roll... Oh, versus cavalry. I'm sorry. The French are going to roll 3d6. So we get a 1 and 1, and that does throw our British cavalry back. They're going to be stuck at 5. These brave lads on the hill are going to be at 4 casualties. And we're going to be done with this turn. The British need to slow down. They've got time to deal with this nonsense if they take their time and do it right. We are on turn number 6. We don't have any real cleanup to do. Nobody's halted. Nobody's disordered. That's kind of a grind here, isn't it, guys? The French have an interesting option here. They could form line and race over to slow down the assault on town. If they can slow it down by a turn or 2, then this infantry might just be able to hang on. The only reason they don't do that is if they form line, this British cavalry will be able to knock them out. I think the only real option they have is to continue. What do we do? Do we continue the fight or do we draw? Maybe what we do is we wheel them and we bring them 4 inches over to here. Get that guy out of here. He's just a commander. He's kind of useless at this point. So we'll squeeze him in there. And then that does provide a little bit of protection against this cavalry unit right there. That's really about all we can do. We will go back to line so that we don't get shot up by this artillery down here. There he is. And then the British get to move. And, oh, you know what? But see, again, all that does is it exposes. We can bring this infantry unit up to right up. Let's bring it up to there, and we can bring these guys up to the top, tippy top of the hill right there. Again, we have to stop them like a couple of inches away. I'm just gonna leave them right there for now. We'll bring them into contact later. On our shooting phase, if these guys shoot, does that mean they can't form square? Oh. In the shooting phase, you can, instead of shooting, you can automatically form square. We will go ahead and take the shot against this unit right here. Of course, this unit is going to shoot back, but that's, a separate issue. The French get to decide which way we're going to be doing our shooting. We'll do the town shooting. This guy first. The British get 1 hit. The French get 1 hit on the British. And that's going to be key because with 5 damage, the boys in town are now going to be only hitting on 5s. I think there's a 5 on this die. There we go. But we do have the same firing the other way around, and it's going to be 1 and 1, so that's 3 and 6. And I guess the town isn't going to hang on nearly as long as I thought they were. Then we have a shot here. We can go 4 dice and 4 dice, and we'll just roll back and forth. We got to coming across the. Oh, I'm sorry. The French are going to do all of their shooting first. So we shoot, and then we're going to shoot down here, and the French get 2 hits on this unit, which may be enough to halt them. Let's take a look at that. If you hit twice in shooting, what happens? Shooting, infantry, combat results, general effects. 2 hits cause a unit to be halted. So, hey, that buys them time. Can a halted unit fire? Yes, they can. But our cannons are going to fire first. We're going to do 1 shot, and then we're going to roll 4 dice for the guys down here. They're going to do 1. That's only going to cause 2 hits on the boys on the hill, but they are now degraded from seasoned to, what's the worst, like conscript, I think, or recruit. Anyway, point being, we're done with all of the shooting. Now we get to do some charges, and the French get to charge first, and the French are going to charge this unit down here. Are they within 4 inches? 1, 2, 3, 4. Just barely. We'll give it to them. We do the same thing. Both units need a 5 or better to charge. And once again, the British are charging and the French are not. How many times are we going to see that? Then we have these guys were going to charge, but they're halted. So no charge there. Both of these units will charge in, but again, you don't get any bonus for that. And then we have 1 charge here. Charging into the flanks of the French. On a 5 or a 6, they form square. No square this time. That's not good at all. I think this game might be just about over. Let's do our melee combat over here on the town side first. We've got these guys. The French are going to do 2 hits. No, we're only hitting on 5s for the French. We're going to do the 7th point of damage on the town defenders. And if this unit of British can score 1 hit, and they do with a result of, actually they score 2, the French defenders are thrust out of the town. On a 5 or a 6, they lose the colors. They do not. They at least manage to escape with the eagle, and this unit is able to move in and take possession of the town. This unit recoiled. They were thrust away from the town. We have a fight over here. It's going to be 5 red dice versus 4 blue dice. Everybody is hitting on 5s because everybody is tired. The British are going to score a single hit, and the French are going to score a single hit. But because the French are right on the edge of the battlefield, they will recoil off the edge of the battlefield. I think this fight is pretty much over. The British recoil to there. And then we have 1 more combat over here where the British cavalry will be rolling 5 dice. Actually, I think it's 6 dice because they're charging the flank. The infantry charged in the flank are only going to roll 1 die, and you only need 2 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4 hits is going to wipe out the last of the French defenders, and with that, it is a total British victory. Grossly outmatched. Well, but it did take them. To be fair, we are on turn number 7. So if the French had been able to charge or countercharge, if the French horses hadn't just stood there like a bunch of dopes for the first 3 rounds of melee, this might have gone very differently. I'm not prepared to say, even though it's a total victory for the British, I am not, and they didn't lose a single unit, I'm not prepared to say that this is a grossly unbalanced scenario. I think that if the dice had just gone slightly different in the favor of the French, if the British had been stuck standing around, if the French had been able to sweep through and hit a couple of different units, right? If the French had been able to win this fight, oh, they were in squadron, but if they'd won that fight, they might have been able to take out this artillery. Losing the artillery first really hurt the French. If instead the French had taken out this artillery, I'm not saying that there would have been a complete wash, or it would have been a complete destruction for the British, but the British would have had a much more difficult time getting what they needed to get done by the end of turn number 10. Kind of a neat scenario. I think this is getting more and more interesting the more we experiment with this rule set. You should give it a try. If you're into Napoleonics at all, you can play it in 28 millimeter. That's fine. They've got all kinds of options for you. See, look at the whole chart. Look at that. Even here, even on the the quick reference sheet, QRS, it even has. Look at that. It's got the. How often do we see 54 millimeter figures these days? Not nearly often enough. Let's make it happen. Get it done, guys. Till next time, I'm praying for you.